Okay, so this is a demonstration of actual exploitation process that you will perform a lot, right? Every time you encounter a remotely exploitable vulnerability, you most probably will use an existing exploit that's either something publicly available on the internet or already incorporated into Metasploit framework. So now we will use a very trivial vulnerability in one of the Windows XP versions. So before SP3, I guess, by default, a freshly installed Windows XP has this vulnerability. So yeah, I hope you don't see this background screen a lot in your life nowadays, but still, unfortunately, Windows XP is still can be found in various environments, mostly in public sector, and this is rather rare on the internet because it's either really isolated from the outside world or it's up to date. Okay, because there are network worms that are specifically designed to exploit this particular vulnerability. So we have a Windows XP here, right? Let's not do anything. Let's perform some basic enumeration first, like this. I have this virtual adapter, right, created by VirtualBox. So this is the interface. Let's first identify what other hosts are in this network. Yeah, it looks like default scan doesn't show anything, but when we run it as root, we see that there is at least something else, right? So most probably, I think it's this address, right? Let's do it really quick. And let's make some script execution included into the scan. So the scan is really fast over the local network, especially when the only traffic we generate is going through the kernel of our host operating system. So we have some scripts running right now. We have to give it some time. So by default, it opens some, not by default, but if you want to perform something, at least do some work on Windows XP, you have to enable file sharing, right? So this is it. Then there is something else which I'm not really familiar with. This is of course RDP, remote desktop protocol, and with some certainty we can tell that this is definitely an NT kernel, right? It's either 2000 or XP, most probably one of these. In fact, it's Microsoft XP Service Pack 2. Okay, and there is some enumeration already, right? So we have some work group name, we have this computer name, we have some remote time, and we have some SMB version 2 protocol configuration revealed during the scan. Okay, so now let's see what Nmap can give us in terms of SMB vulnerabilities, right? So as you remember, there is a lot of scripts in Nmap scripts directory. Some of them start with this and then contain this, right? So here we are. Let's check them. Let's check them all, right? Let's just do this, and then configure our scan like this. Right? Okay. Come on. We have to type nmap at least. It does some port probing, but we don't see it because it's really fast for 3 TCP ports. And as we see, these vulnerabilities are not found. This vulnerability check has been interrupted for some reason, and we see this vulnerability that I was talking about in the very beginning of this demo. That's so-called MS08067. So as you see from this notion, from this code name, right, for the vulnerability, it has been discovered in 2008, and this is just by the order of disclosure and issuing the update. Microsoft has registered it as number 67 during this specific year, right? So what we will do now? Now we will fire up our MSF console, which I have already started actually, and we will see what we can do, right? So we can perform the same enumeration and vulnerability scanning through Metasploit. As you might already know, Metasploit provides different types of modules. Some of them are exploits, and this is the number of them. Some of them are so-called auxiliary that are basically doing something, right? So these are actions that do not lead to exploitation, right? So this is not exploitation of a vulnerability of some sort. This is rather performing some actions like, I don't know, logging in as a specific user, or creation of a user account on the compromised system, or dumping some information based on some common protocol, right? So, like, yeah, that's really anything beyond exploitation that can be automated during the attack phase, right? And there are 279 already post-exploitation modules, right? These are really cool. They allow you to do all sorts of information gathering after you have already entered, breaking into the system. And there are some other things like different payloads. These are basically agents, or again, some automated tools that are run once exploit is successfully run against the system, and so on. Encoders, open encoders, and so on. So this is really sophisticated, I would say, right? It's relatively easy to use if you are not afraid of Unix console, but the tool by itself is quite large right now. Yeah, I remember the first releases of it when HD Moore written a book about Metasploit. It was still in Perl. Then over the season, he and the other contributors have just rewritten everything on Ruby. So now it's running on Ruby, and HDM has left the project. Like, he is still there, but he's not leading it actively. He has sold basically the project to a commercial firm, Rapid7. They're doing a really good job by keeping it open source and free. I mean, the framework itself, but there is Metasploit Pro, the product that they built over it, and it is quite cool as well. However, it's not cheap, I would say, compared to other exploitation toolkits. It's relatively not really expensive, I would say, but it costs money, quite a lot of it. Yeah, so it's not a tool you would just buy and use for yourself like you can do with a burp split or something, right? So Let's explore what it can do, and here we can enter some basic comments. This help, I think it extends based on the context that you are in, and you can get into many of them. For example, right from the root context, you can load some framework plugin that can be either a handler or an exploit or an auxiliary module and so on. You can list them somehow, I guess. Yeah. But that's not the coolest thing. We will do here. Let's just browse for a while and then select the exploitation module that is corresponding to MS 8067. Yeah. So let's first show auxiliary modules. There is quite a bunch of them. Yeah. So it has Postgres as a backend. However, it's still quite, it takes quite long to export all the auxiliary modules available, right? So as you can see here, there is this taxonomy of modules. They are classified first by disclosure date, some of them, right? If there was some vulnerability or issue that is used by auxiliary modules, it's mentioned here. For exploits, it's almost always here, right? So it's not something written as a tool, right? It's in exploit sense, it's always it has a disclosure date. It's disclosed at some point and then patched by a vendor, and exploitation code is written by hackers, and then based on that or by their own, this exploitation technique is incorporated into Metasploit framework, right? So also they have ranks. This means the level of reliance you can have out of it, right? So if it's normal, it's more or less okay. It can be also excellent. This means that it can be run almost in any situation, and will most probably allow you to run the module multiple times, not causing the denial of service condition on the other end, right? So auxiliary is almost always okay.